Imagine waking up one day to find your entire town has been sentenced to death, not by war, not by natural disaster, but by your own government. Every home, every street, every memory scheduled for demolition. This isn't a dystopian nightmare. This happened in America, and the town's name was Centralia, Pennsylvania. What could possibly drive a government to erase an entire community from existence? The answer lies beneath your feet, in a fire that has been burning for over 60 years, and it's still burning today. Centralia wasn't always a ghost town. In its prime during the early 1900s, this Pennsylvania coal mining community thrived with nearly 3,000 residents. The streets buzzed with life. Children played in the parks. Miners emerged from the earth covered in coal dust but proud of their work, and families built generational homes on land they believed would be theirs forever. The town had everything a small American community needed: churches, schools, stores, a post office, and that irreplaceable sense of belonging that only tight-knit communities possess. But beneath this picturesque town lay both its fortune and its curse: anthracite coal. For decades, this hard, clean-burning coal made Centralia prosperous. The mines provided jobs, stability, and identity. The residents were coal people through and through, connected to the earth in ways most modern Americans could never understand. However, by the 1960s, many of these mines had closed, leaving behind a honeycomb of abandoned tunnels beneath the town, a labyrinth of emptiness waiting for disaster. The catastrophe began on May 27, 1962, with what seemed like routine municipal maintenance. The town council ordered a cleanup of the local landfill, which happened to be located in an abandoned strip mine pit near the Oddfellow Cemetery. The method chosen was common for the era: controlled burning. Firefighters set the trash ablaze, extinguished the visible flames, and believed the job was done. They were catastrophically wrong. What they didn't realize was that the fire had found a crack, a small opening into the vast network of coal mines beneath Centralia. Coal, especially anthracite, is incredibly energy-dense. Once ignited in the oxygen-rich environment of mine tunnels, it becomes nearly impossible to extinguish. The fire began to spread underground, creeping through seams and tunnels like a living entity, feeding on millions of tons of coal that would sustain it for centuries. At first, the signs were subtle. Residents noticed the ground felt warmer in certain spots. Snow melted in unusual patterns during winter. Steam began rising from cracks in the roads. But these were coal country people. They'd lived with mines their entire lives. Surely this was manageable. Surely the authorities would fix it. They tried. Between 1962 and 1978, various attempts were made to extinguish or contain the fire. Workers dug trenches, injected water and fire-retardant materials, excavated burning sections. Nothing worked. The fire was too deep, too spread out, too entrenched in the complex geology beneath the town. With each failed attempt, the fire grew stronger, more extensive, more unstoppable. The beast beneath Centralia was hungry, and it would not be tamed. By the late 1970s, the situation had evolved from concerning to dangerous. Gas station owner John Coddington discovered his underground fuel tanks had heated to dangerous temperatures, over 170 degrees Fahrenheit. Carbon monoxide began seeping into basements. The concentration of this deadly, odorless gas was reaching lethal levels in people's homes. Residents reported feeling sick, dizzy, and fatigued, classic symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning. Then came the incident that shocked the nation. On Valentine's Day, 1981, 12-year-old Todd Domboski was walking in his grandmother's backyard when the earth suddenly opened beneath him. A sinkhole, caused by the underground fire weakening the surface, swallowed the boy. He plunged into a steaming void, grabbing onto tree roots as deadly gases billowed around him. His cousin rescued him just in time, pulling him from what would have been a horrible death. Todd survived, but the incident revealed a terrifying truth. The ground beneath Centralia could give way at any moment. No one was safe. This near tragedy finally prompted serious government action. In 1984, Congress allocated $42 million for relocation efforts. Residents were offered buyouts for their properties. Most took the money and left, abandoning homes that had been in their families for generations. It was heartbreaking, watching people pack up their lives, knowing they could never return. The government's message was clear. Centralia was no longer viable for human habitation. But not everyone left. A small group of residents refused to abandon their homes. These were people who had lived in Centralia their entire lives, whose parents and grandparents were buried in local cemeteries, who couldn't imagine existing anywhere else. They loved their town with a fierce loyalty that outsiders struggled to understand. To them, leaving felt like betrayal of their memories, their ancestors, their very identities. The standoff between these holdouts and the government became increasingly bitter. In 1992, Pennsylvania Governor Bob Casey invoked eminent domain, claiming all properties in Centralia. The town's zip code was revoked in 2002. Centralia officially ceased to exist on maps. Buildings were demolished systematically. Streets were torn up. The government was determined to erase the town completely, both for safety reasons and to discourage the curious from visiting a dangerous site. Yet through it all, a handful of residents remained. They lived in a surreal landscape. Houses standing isolated on streets to nowhere, surrounded by empty lots where neighbors once lived. They dealt with cracked roads that released toxic smoke, with ground that could collapse without warning, with the constant knowledge that beneath their feet, the earth itself was on fire. Legal battles continued for years, with residents fighting for their right to stay in their own homes. The town's Catholic church, St. Ignatius, held services until 1995 before finally closing. The building was demolished in 1997. The post office closed. The last businesses shuttered. By 2013, only 7 residents remained, clinging to their homes like shipwreck survivors refusing to abandon a sinking vessel. These determined individuals had managed to retain life estates, allowing them to stay until their deaths, though they couldn't sell or pass on their properties. Today, Centralia is one of America's most haunting ghost towns. The main street, once vibrant with activity, is now buckled and cracked, with steam and occasionally flames rising from fissures. A section of highway, part of Route 61, has become an unlikely tourist attraction, covered in colorful graffiti and known as Graffiti Highway. The road itself is severely damaged, with cracks and deformations caused by the underground inferno. In 2020, this section was finally covered with dirt to discourage visitors, but the fascination remains. The fire continues burning. It has consumed hundreds of acres of coal seams and could potentially burn for another 250 years or more. The underground temperatures in some areas exceed 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists estimate the fire could affect up to 3,700 acres. The cost to extinguish it completely has been estimated at over $660 million. Money no government entity is willing to spend to save a town that no longer officially exists. What makes Centralia's story particularly tragic is how preventable it was. If the 1962 landfill fire had been properly extinguished, if workers had been more thorough, if they'd understood the risk of abandoned mines, none of this would have happened. A thriving community was lost because of a cleanup operation gone wrong, a small oversight that cascaded into one of the most expensive and long-lasting disasters in American history. Centralia has become a symbol of environmental catastrophe, of government power over individual property rights, of the decline of coal country, of impermanence of communities we believe will last forever. It's been the inspiration for the Silent Hill video game franchise and horror films. Urban explorers and curious tourists still visit, despite warnings and no trespassing signs drawn by the apocalyptic atmosphere and the notion of a town literally erased from existence. The few remaining residents, now elderly, continue their quiet vigil. As of recent counts, perhaps 10 people still live there, in a town where streets have been reclaimed by nature, where buildings stand like tombstones, where smoke rises from the earth as a constant reminder of the fire below. When these last residents pass away, Centralia will finally become what the government intended: a complete ghost town, a memory, a cautionary tale. The cemeteries remain, including the Oddfellows Cemetery near where the fire began. A cruel irony. The dead have outlasted the living in Centralia. Graves are still maintained by descendants who moved away, but haven't forgotten. These cemeteries are among the few official acknowledgments that a town once existed here, that thousands of people once called this place home. Environmental scientists continue monitoring the fire, studying how underground coal fires behave, how they spread, what can and cannot stop them. Centralia has become an unintended laboratory for understanding the phenomena which occur worldwide wherever coal is accessible and can be ignited. China, India, and other countries face similar underground coal fires, some burning for decades or centuries. Centralia's lessons inform how these fires might be managed, contained, or at least understood. The economic impact extended far beyond Centralia itself. Nearby communities watch property values plummet. The stigma of the underground fire affected the entire region. People feared similar disasters could occur elsewhere in Pennsylvania's coal country. Trust in local and state government eroded as residents felt abandoned by the very authorities meant to protect them. The psychological toll on those forced to relocate, the trauma of losing not just a house but an entire community, cannot be measured in dollars. Some former residents described feeling like refugees in their own country. They moved to nearby towns but never felt at home. Their children grew up without the close-knit community they'd experienced. Family reunions became gatherings of displaced people sharing memories of a place that no longer existed. The sense of loss is profound and permanent. You cannot go home when home has been erased. Centralia's story is ultimately about human stubbornness versus nature's indifference. It's about a town that thrived on coal and died by coal. It's about how quickly everything we build can vanish, how fragile our communities are, how a single mistake can echo through generations. The fire beneath Centralia doesn't care about property rights, childhood memories, or family legacies. It simply burns, indifferent to the human drama playing out above it. The town has become America's Pompeii, not buried by volcanic ash, but erased by government decree and underground fire, preserved only in photographs, memories, and a few structures that still stand against all logic. It serves as a stark reminder that sometimes, despite our technology and determination, we cannot fix our mistakes. Sometimes, the only option is to walk away and let nature reclaim what we once called home. For those who live there, Centralia will never truly be gone. It exists in their stories, in their dreams, in the ache of displacement. They carry it with them, the town that was erased from maps, but not from hearts. And beneath the soil where children once played and families once gathered, the fire continues its slow, relentless consumption of everything that remains, a funeral pyre for a community that time and government forgot. So here's the question that should keep you up at night. How many other Centralias are waiting to happen? How many abandoned mines lie beneath unsuspecting communities right now? How stable is the ground you're standing on? And if disaster struck your town, would you be one of those who evacuated, or one of the stubborn few who refuse to leave? If this story fascinated you, if it made you think about the fragility of the places we call home, then subscribe to this channel. We explore the forgotten, the erased, and the stories that history tries to bury, sometimes literally. There are countless other ghost towns, abandoned places, and lost communities waiting to be rediscovered. Don't let their stories disappear completely. Hit that subscribe button, and let's keep their memories alive together.